Good afternoon, evening, morning, or whatever it is, wherever you are. This is Crucial Survival, and this is part 3 of a series I'm working on with Graham Scheiblich. And we are going to be talking about, once more, coping in a crisis. Graham, welcome again. It's always exciting to see you.
It's a pleasure, Steve, man. It's always great to be with you. Looking forward to our conversation again.
Absolutely. For people who haven't been here before, can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work you do?
Absolutely. So, yeah, my name is Graham Scheiblich, and I live in California. I've been a coach, an intuitive and an energy healer, life coach for about 6 years now. And I really started to get more into the business coaching aspect for other coaches more recently. But my passion is truly in developing our intuition to help us, with all areas of life. I'm a father. I've got 4 girls, particularly like the outdoors. I know we have that in common. And but as a father, I want to be at the leading edge of change in the world to make it easier for those future generations of entrepreneurs that might, particularly like because I have 4 daughters who are coming into, college and just right at that age. Really want it to be easier for them to create wealth and freedom for their lives, have those options.
Yeah.
And, I've always told them whether or not they become an entrepreneur, just think like one. There's so many benefits to thinking out of the box and separating yourself out in the marketplace, whatever your goals are. And I also believe that there's a real disconnect in the world at the root of our problems is we're just disconnected from ourselves. And I think that training our intuition is going to help us all get, generally what we want to live a happy, thriving, abundant way of life. And so I've really adopted this framework for training our intuition. And I think that's going to come into play in our conversation, as far as being intuitive around getting through critical situations, in particular crisis, could be really helpful. Yeah.
To catch people up again, this being part 3, we initially discussed that we must be present and accept the situation. That is stage 1 of coping in a crisis, that we actually accept that we're here and we turn up, step up, whatever it is, and be present in the situation. And then in interview 2, we talked about the gut. We talked about trusting the gut, whether or not that's come from experience, whether or not that's come from wisdom, wherever that's come from. Being in touch with your gut, your intuition is incredibly important. And I think that and parts of the first interview, when we were talking about blockages, will come into play. And we're now going to talk about inaction and indecision. And I just want to make a distinction that I use doing in the book, is that inaction and not acting are 2 entirely different things. In not acting is a choice. You may have summed up all of your options, and not acting might be the best option. But as a contrast, inaction is simply not acting, just not so much freezing. This is where definitions maybe get a little bit woolly, if you like. Maybe it's when you're asked to do something. Maybe it's as well with respect to decision, and indecision causes inaction. Where do we start? Where do we start diagnosing why people don't act? Over to you.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question, and it's really important to make those distinctions, particularly if we're preparing ourselves for just life. I mean, if we're gonna, I'm a father, I have children, I enjoy the outdoors with them. I've got to be on my game to make sure that I'm keeping them safe and also preparing them for, even just going on a hike. You want to be aware of the elements. If I bring them out into the ocean and go surfing, of course, the same thing. You want them to be aware of their own limitations, and respect the environment. And in relationship, I mean, this is a critical thing. If we're going to go out together into some sort of put ourselves into, takes kind of an educated risk, put ourselves into an environment. We know that there's not imminent, I'm sorry, but there's a possibilities that anything can really happen anytime.
Yeah.
So the way we respond to these critical situations, I think it's really important to take the time to understand these distinctions. Are we freezing because we are going into that survival mode of freeze, fight, flight, fawn, whatever those reactions are, where you're just reacting to the circumstances of the world, and that's a real thing.
In that sort of lizard brain kind of way, if you like.
I mean, it's just who we are. It's our biological makeup. And so if we can, I think the important thing is, and you started with the idea of presence, if we take more time to just kind of nurture ourselves into understanding what these layers are within us, it'll just make it harder. I'm sorry, it'll make it much easier for us when we get into those. And this is part of the preparation that I'm so I value so highly, is the preparation is getting to know yourself at these different layers, right? Because there is that layer of freeze and fight or flight. It's just an animalistic reaction. And to get to know ourselves at that level is incredibly important, because, you also mentioned acceptance. What we want to do is accept that we are this biological creature in the world, and we're going to have these reactions. But the more in tune we are with those reactions, then we're going to start to create a little bit more decision space for ourselves. And that's when we get into being able to consciously decide in a moment whether to act, react, or if we're reacting, and how to respond to our own reaction. Here we're talking about different layers, but these are really layers that we have to start to allow those lines to blur a bit, and then get, focus in, focus out, so that we can really feel into where we are limited in our choices. Because, there could be two people in any situation, and one is going to respond entirely different to what's happening. What the reality is going to be entirely different for each individual.
And also, it's I found I consider myself a man of action. Having been within the emergency services, there is no time for indecision, and there is no time for inaction. And I preach action, being an action-centric being in emergency situations, in survival situations, and in life. But I've met people within the emergency services and within business that they just, and it's not an animalistic freeze. It's more, is it I wonder whether or not it is a fear. If it is a fear of judgment, it's a fear that their actions will have negative consequences on themselves or others, whether or not they're going to be judged, whether or not their action is ineffective. And from a emergency services, medical perspective, and a number of other places, you might encounter the phrase that there are more problems and deaths caused by indecision than there are by bad decision. And in a critical situation, I know that if you've got imperfect information, or I've got information, dynamic information, that you have to make a decision, and then you have to act on it. So what are the blockers that people might be feeling in? I say it might be in business. It might be somebody who has a great idea, that there is a market for it.
I don't know if you're still there, Steve. I've lost you off the screen. I'd love to go into, it looks like I'm still live, so I'm going to go ahead and answer that question. And man, so, I'm going to try to just create a very, hey, there you are, you're back.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I just went in on starting to answer that question because, there is that lizard brain reaction, but then there's more of a human conditioning that happens, and really basically, I mean, every single one of us has been kind of told the way the world's going to be. I mean, we've had a lot of decisions made for us, and in those formative years, from around the age 7 and younger, most of our decisions were made for us, and we're told the way the world was to be. And so we just went along with it. That's our basic survival mechanism, is to just, kind of accept what we're told so that we can go along. And, historically, just as a human being, there's a tremendous amount of security in that. But that mechanism no longer serves us after a while, because we forgot how to be autonomous and make our own decisions in the world. So we have to retrain ourselves to do that. So a symptom of that, or an outcome, might be, one person who is still stuck in that mode of really needing the world to validate and provide those answers for us. That person in a social situation, particularly a critical one, might freeze up because they're just they're not used to accessing or resourcing a very fluid or flexible kind of response and make decisions on the spot. Another person might have the absolute opposite reaction and take charge and actually implement or try to prescribe a situation with potentially fatal or inaccurate information, and really not serve the situation. Try to take, they're with good intentions, trying to take charge, trying to do the right thing, still might be overshooting or not. It's the same sort of reaction. You're not necessarily resourced and fluid and flexible to respond with what actually is needed in the situation. So you go into this reactive mode, right? So you have on one extreme somebody freezing, on the other extreme, and you can see this actually. It's an interesting psychological experiment to see how people fall victim to those who actually know that the victim is in a freeze mode. That if they confront a victim, they actually understand that they're running the same kind of programming, and that the victim will at some point not know how to respond to a challenge, and therefore the victim will continue to victimize the prey. And you can see this, and unfortunately it's how a lot of children are abused and abducted. But these are the kind of patterns that we adapt as culturally or socially.
Yeah,
and it's more conditioning than it is that innate lizard brain.
yes.
So we really have to. We have to get ahead of that stuff and start to. You mentioned fear. Fear is a big part of it, and I'm just going to go really big picture, general here, and throw this out there that the more we understand our own fear, the easier it is to make our decisions about the other, and that's a critical piece, because all of a sudden we're able to expand or widen our decision space to include what is happening with the other people around us, and therefore respond to their needs much more accurately. So just wanted to mention that, because the fear is, it's at the root of a lot of indecision or lack of decision space is what I call it. Kind of the options that might be there.
There's a author. He's former SBS special forces in the UK.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book called The Fear Bubble. And it's a great book. But the thesis is that all fears, be fear of judgment, fear of consequence, all of these things boil down to fear of not being good enough. Now, you may or may not agree with that, but he's given you an analogy to a corridor, and the doors are left and right all the way, and you have to progress through life. You have to progress through this corridor But if you never open one of these doors, if you keep walking down your corridor, you get comfortable. And if you get comfortable, you consider change in itself, let alone something fearful happening, to be a problem in itself. And he was talking about opening the doors, but coming from a point of fear and having a small win. It might be a little thing and a little thing and another one that's slightly bigger. And there may be something you fail at, but you come back from that because all of these other things you did. But you can go forwards, and there's doors, and some of these work and some of them don't. And that's okay, because what you are now is a door opener. So have you found when you're working with maybe businessmen that they cannot become self-employed, employed entrepreneurs because of this narrow working for somebody else? It's nice and comfy, that they just cannot get out of that corridor, and in fact, in wider life, not being able to. Is that something that you find within your work? That analogy, maybe?
Oh my gosh, and I really want to just kind of emphasize this analogy in the author and the frameworks that he's working from, because what he's done really is kept an incredibly potentially complex problem, and he's done a fantastic job at keeping it really simple. And this is really important work, because for thousands of years we've been facing the same problems. I mean, ultimately, really, since Gilgamesh was etched in stone, we have the same emotional problems. And being able to read authors like this who use psychology to kind of frame it in a very, very simple way is so important. I mean, it's really critical to our transformation today in learning and growing. And there is discomfort in that, in our own transformation, in our own growth. There's reasons why we haven't naturally just evolved, or not evolved. I mean, evolved, yes, but developed, right? There should be a natural flow of progression of human development throughout our lifetime, where we just get wiser and wiser. But we could spend decades frozen in this, like you say, a kind of a comfort zone, and have it really difficult. Even if we have the systems and processes to work within, we're still not able to fill in those processes with what it takes internally to step up to the options or opportunities that might be right in front of us. So I think it's really important that, yes, fear ultimately is, this bedmate of, our self-worth. And I don't want to make fear wrong or bad, because, one of the things that the author is doing here is, and what you've just described, is those small wins are really coming into a relationship with your fear. So the fear ultimately becomes this little ping, a wake-up call, a notification to say, hey, there's an opportunity here. There's a moment here, an opportunity to capture a small win. I'm just here to remind you, the fear being, I'm speaking as the fear. The fear is just here to remind you and give you a kind of a catalyst for that moment, and say, hey, wake up for a second here. There's an opportunity. If you, in a sense, befriend the fear and use it as that catalyst to find that small win. The smallest win, though, you just nailed it. That smallest, that's going to open a door. If it'll crack a door open for you, and you just felt that, that beam of light, or that little gust of wind come through, and you just recognize it, man, you might step through that door tomorrow or next week, and it could be it can be a life-changing, game-changing moment for you.
Absolutely. That door analogy, it's just so simple.
It's great
to visualize. You don't have to You don't have to be embedded. It's not even pop psychology.
No,
It's
not at all.
it's just an analogy. There's a very
I mean,
nice.
you said it. I'm really anti-pop psychology because there's a lot of intellectual and spiritual bypass in in a lot of this bubblegum pop psychology, and but you can use simple psychological frameworks to communicate a powerful message and to create great transformation. If they're used in the right context and they're explained well. And so no, I appreciate the entire analogy. I mean, those small wins and stepping through door after door continuously is just a muscle that you're building, and it's training, and it's just a really great analogy. It really is.
Yeah. So let's take ourselves into a crisis situation. Spatial forces guy, he's probably going to be all right. He's had a few situations to train that muscle, if you like, and but he would still say that in a new situation, there's still a lot of consideration, and it wasn't so much like in his later career, but in his early career when he's going to have to burst into a room but there's definitely at least 10 people in it, and there's only one guy behind him, and he's like, and go, and he didn't, and the guy behind him is junior to him, and it's just like, I've got you, yeah, I'm with you, and they went, and it everything happened. He didn't need the calculation of all the sort of, it's this, then do I duck? It was just, he had support, and his ability to act just happened. It just, he was in the flow then. And this is the sort of thing I found again in emergency services is there was one of the guys in his early career was saying, how do we, in a very small boat with 3 or 4 people on it, how do we get a decision made and everybody acting? And I said to him, you make a decision and you tell people what we're doing. Yeah. And it might be that they've got more experience of this bit and that bit and the other bit, but there's no time for discussion. There is action, and you are the leader of action. And so you lead it and we do it. And because people are waiting for somebody else to maybe give them permission to act, or simply tell them what to do. And I guess those people that haven't opened any of the doors haven't got any reference points outside the corridor, if you like, to pull on. Within computing businesses, you have something called the senior junior, and the senior junior has been in the company for a long time, but it's been siloed in this little box, and is very, very comfortable, and it's very difficult to get them out of that area in order to get, like you say, professional and personal development. And I think that's very, very important. And I wonder, to sort of tie these together, how might people start? What is the start? If somebody is accepted that they find it difficult to act, where do we start? Where do we start helping people to know that if they are in a crisis, they have the ability to make a decision and act upon it? I know it's a big ask, but where's the starting point and the sort of path where sorry, I've been waffling quite a lot now, but how do you think that people might approach the path?
Fantastic question. That I want to just kind of go back to this history of humanity, and we have thousands of years of information, and we've been kind of toiling with these same questions for a long time, and here we are with the internet now, and so much of that information is right at our fingertips. So it's really easy to get lost in the sea of information. And I always like to tell people that, if you're of a certain age, even a young person, they've already consumed enough information to know enough about the world around them that I recommend, as a place to start, take a break from all of it. Really take a break from all of it and get quiet.
Right.
And we also, you mentioned the 3 people in a boat, and then these social situations. And there's a leadership position, and then these other folks who are looking for inspiration. So we just need to learn how to be those leaders in the world, to share great information, high quality, high frequency. I call it high frequency information, and people are developing a nose for it, and younger people get this today. So they're looking for adults to just share the message that, okay, look, it's as important to go out there and educate yourself and understand the frameworks and the technologies and those things that we can accomplish with all of the beautiful mechanics and the technology and the computers and everything that we can do to improve the world. But equally as important, I think we need to be sharing the message that humans are the creator of these technologies. The wisdom that you're seeking and the information and the keys to those doors are in you. And I think that message needs to be shared more often, and people need to spend more time getting quiet, spending a few moments with themselves, finding somebody to help them with this. Another piece of this is we don't do it alone. And therefore somebody is going to, in a group situation, kind of take the lead for a moment. And, we don't want to abdicate our authority and our power to anybody, but in any moment we can really gain something and learn something from each other in these situations. So we can look to each other for these teaching moments and look for the leader in the group at the moment. A good leader is going to elevate the energy in any room, in any boat, and inspire the others to kind of rise to the occasion. That's good leadership. And they're going to reach back continually, check in with the people and see if they're okay. What are their individual needs, if that's possible, if the crisis isn't too heightened. But here's what we're talking about, is preparing for those really critical moments where there's no time to think. There's only time to respond the best we can. And now here's the crux of it. What I'm getting at is the more time that we spend quietly with our own faculties and understanding who we are at this powerful level of a creator, the ability to be a creative person and affect our environment, that's where we need to spend more time. We need to understand ourselves more as that powerful creative person. And that's where we start to experience an expansive space of options, choice making. Where are the answers? What can I do in the situation? How can I elevate the situation to be, for the greatest for all? You need to see so much fear around some basic things, through COVID. There's a lot of polarized opinions about what to do about this looming crisis that's still, around. And instead of, kind of cooperating around it and allowing people to make their own decisions and protecting each other, just practicing good prudence, you see so much anger and judgment around what other people are doing. Mm-hmm. And so it couldn't be more stark at this moment in time, that this is so needed to really, step up and step into yourself and start to, get to know yourself as equally, if not more so, than you're out there cultivating your intellectual knowledge or your technological prowess, I suppose.
Yeah, it sounds to me that what you're advocating, and it's ringing really true, is that we take the time now to start and stop and take time, because in the situation, in a critical situation, we won't have that time, and we need to be in that space. We wouldn't have learned to be in that space, to respect our self, our gut, our intellect, so that we can trust ourselves in that small time frame. And it sounds, to take a slight British analogy, if you were a Brit in the corridor and you needed to take some space, you'd pull up a chair, have a nice cup of tea with a custard cream, and just take that sort of tea and time. And it's a sort of very, very much a thing that soldiers from all around the world will say about British soldiers, is that they will just, in all sorts of situations, they will brew up and make a cup of tea, because it's automatically calming. And so when you don't have time to have that cup of tea when the world goes pear-shaped, it's now time to have that and reassess and learn. And I think that's wonderful. That seems like glib.
So I lost you again, Steve, but you know what I'm going to do is I've just got to say this while you disappeared. Hopefully this is recording. I think we were like brothers from another mother. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I'm just going to keep on.
Yeah, sorry. There's
No, that's
something
okay.
with my internet connection. Thankfully, because we're using an external service, you will be keeping going. Sorry.
No, I
Cup of
wanted
tea.
to. I couldn't agree more, man. So I've been a meditation facilitator for several years, and I was trained in it. And my mentor, helped me clarify something about meditation that was really important, and I think it's just a really helpful concept that meditation should be, or ought to be, or can be for the thinking person. We're not trying to escape our thoughts per se, but have tea with them. And if we could just take a moment and really settle down, and there's this beautiful. It might be like an old Zen saying. I'm not sure exactly where the idea comes from, but when you have a pot of tea, you toss the tea leaves into the pot, and they sit there for a moment, and then eventually they start to settle down to the bottom. And if you just had the patience to witness that, and maybe even imagine yourself as one of those tea leaves,
Yeah.
this entire process of slowing down and stopping and having tea, quieting the mind, and it's a powerful exercise that's way overlooked. I mean, it's way undervalued, and I think it's just necessary. If you don't have a pot of tea and you're not into tea, just give yourself that same kind of attention and take the time to do it, because what you're doing is you're actually creating more space for yourself in the future. If you're responding to the world and actually creating your environment because you're taking the time to realize yourself at that level, to actualize yourself, that you have those capabilities, you can create your environment. And maybe taking time for tea is exactly what you need to do to actually, discover this part of you. Then, man, you couldn't have come up with a better prescription, than take time
Nice
for
cup
tea.
of tea. Yeah.
Really. And enjoy it. Absolutely revel in it, I mean.
And that's the thing. It shouldn't be a chore.
No. Can't
not
be.
not at all.
Not at all.
Because that's just another. It's not a fear as such, but it's just another negative thing that means you will not act.
It's another thing that you're telling yourself you ought to do, you should do. And you got to start moving away from those ought tos and shoulds, and really start to take enjoyment and satisfaction from taking that time,
Yeah.
because really all of life can become more, it really can become easy. It really can get to be good. And you can find that ease and enjoyment and satisfaction in the most difficult work if you practice this really basic concept of, having tea with yourself or with a mate.
Yeah.
Just do it. Take the time.
Yeah. It's interesting that you brought in that it was a coach, sorry, it was a mentor that taught you about this. Is something to have a um, a psychiatrist or some external, maybe even a sounding board, let alone somebody with experience who's coaching you through life, is not very British.
Mm.
Yeah, we'd very much like to think that we are totally capable. Thank you very much. We'll go to training courses where somebody who knows something professes that, and you start to know it, but it's not quite the same as coaching. It's not quite the same as mentorship. And I've recently taken on a coach for writing, and I've had to just sit back with my very British attitude and say, you know what, these people really do know what they're doing. And I'm not trying to say that we are experts on and like to the next level, and we could mentor anybody or anything. But for me, taking on that coach and sitting back and saying, making the decision to do that has given me peace with with this writing, which is difficult and somewhat stressful in volume, and it's pleased me. I think it's important. And yes, I'm a trainer. You are a coach. I am, in a sense, a coach within work. Mentor, I'm not quite there, if you like. That's not. I don't consider myself a mentor. But yeah, coaching was a big thing for me to take on, and had to conquer this attitude of mine at that point. But yeah, great decision to do that. A number of my friends, I don't know if it's a later life thing, have considered life coaches as well.
Mm.
I don't know if that's an age thing. What do you think? Have you found that it's an age thing or a
No, I think it's a
particular
time.
demographic thing? Or
I think it's a sign of the times.
yeah,
I think that the Brits, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm going to make some assumptions, but because of the internet, I've had a fortunate of making more British friends and friends from Europe. And then of course there's the iconic, Western or American cowboy, right? Who's the rugged individual. I think Brits might be just a little bit more cynical about accepting help from others.
yeah,
And it's really the same thing, and it's just something we got to get over. And I think that's happening. I think that the world is, there's, because of the internet, there's more forums out there where people are just open to new ideas and being helped. And because we're out there promoting our unique services as coaches, as mentors, and consultants in these virtual networking groups and events, it's just, we're being exposed to more ideas, and we're seeing the results. So, really like right in front of our face. And one of those things that's very stark, which I love, I just absolutely love this, because it really does speak to one of my core, my pillar values or beliefs that I've built my business on, which is making it easier for the next generation coming up to create freedom and wealth for themselves, is that the old models aren't necessarily playing out the way that they were sort of promised to give us a leg up in the world.
Yeah.
So entrepreneurship is something that is being embraced at a much younger age now. So the new entrepreneur doesn't look anything like the one from last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They're younger, they're more open-minded, they're willing to do whatever it takes, accept mentorship, coaching, which is just not the old model, right? It's just not that, we were kind of rightly, coached or indoctrinated into being cynical or being that rugged individual is just a cultural thing. So it's what we came up with, but I think it's a sign of the times
Yeah.
that there's another way to get a leg up in the world and to move farther faster. And mentorship, coaching, hiring a consultant, taking private lessons, those are just things that it's just available. And I think our level of awareness is different today than it was. And so,
Yeah.
that I'm also, along with that, I don't think that we need to become the like some expert in ancient wisdom and study all the wisdom schools across across the millennia to figure out what's going to work going into the future. I think that because of this new awareness, and there's people out there, fantastic mentors and coaches that are helping us grow and transform so much more quickly now with really simple information. I think that book that you mentioned, The Fear Bubble, is just a great example. There's people out there who are simplifying what has been so mysterious for thousands of years, and now we're able to just absorb the information. Honestly, I think we're a new human. I think that our brains are just ready to move
Yeah.
on and create a new world, and we're ready for it. We're now evolving into a human that's ready for a new world and to embrace that change.
Absolutely. There's a particular as a business coach. I don't employ him as a coach, but I listen to his talks, and a great deal of people who make courses or write books or articles and the like, but actually don't do that. They don't the book. They don't write the article or create the course because they consider themselves comparatively not good enough. And I could do the same. I could say, well, I can't possibly be as knowledgeable and experienced as Bear Grylls. But he said, there are people that are now like you were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And what they want to do is get better. And if they can get to where you are now by taking somewhat less of the spaghetti path that you might have taken to get there, then that's good. And it is, in fact, doing them a disservice of not giving them the opportunity to take that. And I think it's important that no matter what knowledge you might have, if it's knowledge that somebody wants, then give it away. Make a course, make a program, write some articles. I think it's exceptionally important to do so. And as I say, I think it gives it's a disservice to people to not do so. And I think we've come all the way around now, and I think I'm trying to summarize what we've spoken about, and I think in terms of action and indecision in a critical situation, it's not quite the lizard brain freed. It's not the same as chosen inaction. chosen not to act. There is indecision and inaction. And we want to help people to not be in that situation when it's critical. And in terms of training, if you like, training the mind, body, and soul, and the wisdom, we can look at that life that we have and look and say to ourselves, yes, we're just on a comfortable corridor with a number of doors that we're not even looking through the cracks, because we may or may not be suffering from some fear or anxiety or historical problem. And what we need to do is sit down, be quiet with ourselves, maybe with a cup of tea, with a friend, and use that time in lieu of time in a crisis to think about the small wins that we can achieve in our life that might give us the ability to open more of these doors, gain more experience, wider experience, and that experience will inform us, our gut, when we are in a crisis, and we can decide quickly and we can act upon that decision. And I think that's a really important strategy that's come out of this interview. And I think you'll agree that that's something I'm going to be really replaying this, because I think it's incredibly strong work. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the interview today?
You know, I want to, I just want to say how awesome that was. You know, the way you put that together. I couldn't agree more. I think that's a powerful sentiment. I think it's a great plan of action if you really want to show up in critical situations in crisis. You are buying all of the time you need by slowing down, getting quiet. And really, I think the only thing I would add to that, Steve, is, you know, let's just be really forthright with the idea that we are powerful creators. We do have that faculty of, you know, we do have a gut, we have the intuition. So use it, you know, dip into it, find it, and claim it. Really, is kind of what I'm saying. You know, if you've got it, claim it. Like, just go right there. You know, we don't want to have to poke around in the old, you know, dark corners. Obviously, if something needs to be healed and there's trauma there, look at it. Look at it, figure out what it is, love it up, and now let's move on, and let's move on from those old stories and claim our true freedom, our true faculties of intelligence and wisdom and flexibility in any situation, and how we can contribute to the world. And the way to do that is, you know, is just what you said. Take the time to get quiet. But I just wanted to add that to it, man. Just really, you know, something in you is going to say yes to what we're saying here. If you're a listener on this program, that that your intuition's in there, that power of creativity is in there, that those higher faculties are in there. They're just underutilized. But I think, you know, looking at our conversation today, I want to emphasize that the world's ready. The younger generation is ready. People who are actively taking action, using coaches and mentors for their personal growth, for their business growth, are going to, they're going to show up in the new world. They're going to show up with the solutions that are needed. And it's looking, and the landscape now is looking like a renaissance. It's looking like a beautiful kind of, I don't want to say a circus, but really, you know, every individual has these unique abilities to showcase in the world. And no, I'm not Bear Grylls. You're not. You know, we don't need to be, because we have our own unique way of looking at the world. And guess what? there are people out there who need to hear this message today. They need to hear more of what you know. And for the listeners, if they, believe that there's something that they have to teach the world, well, that's what the internet is here for today. And there's our frameworks for you to go out and build that course, create that mentorship, and just create a way for yourself to express and inspire others. And if you want to build a business around that, fantastic. This is what's happening. And, I'm just excited that we're talking about this. And I love what we've talked about today here, Steve. I really do.
Yeah, me too. And thank you. That's a great addition. And I'm gonna cap it off with this I'll repeat, if you like, is important stuff. We've discussed important things today, and my advice is to share this with a cup of tea with a friend. If you've watched all the way to here and you believe in this as much as we do, then share it with a friend, with a cup of tea. Take that time and learn and go forward.
And be inspired. People want to hear your, if you're a listener and you catch this, and I can't emphasize enough. Everybody's got a message for somebody else, and there's people in this world, the billions of people on this planet. They need to hear from you. If you think you have a message, learn how to. This is what I'm doing now with my program. Is I'm helping people with a message understand how to communicate their message out into a marketplace. Find a space that that they're being going to be received. And there are people out there who are going to resonate and who are waiting and want what you have to say. Your unique perspective is somebody else's, need for the day. It's going to help them out. And so just go for it.
Yeah. Go for it. Graham, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on again for so long. It's great just to go forwards and backward. Are we going to do part 4?
Oh, absolutely, man. I can't imagine not doing that. We got a good thing going here.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying these. This is part 3. Go back, watch part 1, part 2. Part 3, I'm not quite sure what we're going to talk about next time, but we'll work it out.
It'll be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Graham, I will speak to you soon. Good luck with your work. Yeah. Have a good day, night, evening, whatever.
You as well. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, Steve.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.